I think you're going a little blurry in your.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the SCV Law and Life podcast. I'm your host, Mason Rashtian. Today's guest is Tony Guarnaccia. He's the founder of Guestify and creator of AI AIVZ, right?
AVIZ.
AIVZ. Which are two platforms focused on how authority is built and recognized in today's AI-driven world. Tony has been ahead of the curve at every major digital shift, from bringing SEO to Fortune 500 companies to managing over $400 million in ad spend for brands like Google, Ford, and ADP, and even pioneering early YouTube advertising. Now he's focused on what he calls authority infrastructure, helping experts build real credibility through relationships, interviews, and endorsements, while making sure that authority is actually recognized by AI systems. His core belief is authority isn't created, it's transferred. Hi, Tony.
Hi.
Welcome to
Thanks
the
for having me
show.
on. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time here.
So, please take a couple of minutes and give us a background about you and your business.
Yeah. So depends on where you want to start, but kind of if you look at the beginning, I grew up as a kid because I think so much of your life is influenced by your childhood. And so if we kind of go way back to the beginning, I grew up in, and we were talking about a little bit about being Italian before. So I grew up in a small Italian bakery. Like that's my parents had that, and my dad was amazing baker. Unfortunately didn't know what he didn't know about growing a business, and so lost everything at a very young age, and kind of had to reinvent myself, and the family had to reinvent itself. So years later when I was in college, I wanted to kind of rectify the past. And so I started one of the first online bakeries, because you mentioned how I always try to be ahead of the curve. I didn't even mention that in my bio, but I was a little bit ahead of the curve in ecom. And so we developed a special cake that you can mail across the country with a photo on it. And so we worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies with that. Also did cakes for Jennifer Lopez, Jay-Z. It was a really interesting time. And I thought, hey, this business thing isn't that hard. And then I realized I didn't know what I didn't know either. And unfortunately, lost everything a second time. But this time I was adult. I was newly married, baby on the way. And so that was a really challenging time as well. And I said, okay, well, this clearly isn't working. How do I find out like how to actually be successful in business? And I thought, well, to be the best, you really got to learn from the best. So that's kind of when I first went to SEO and how this all ties together with where I am now. But the thought was, okay, let me be early with SEO. So I started, believe it or not, I was ranking for birthday cakes and corporate gifts, all these crazy terms. And then that initially led me into helping others, because at the time I was so ahead with SEO, no one even knew what it was. Like, what is this SEO? So I was able to launch SEO into a lot of companies, like you mentioned before, ADP. I did a lot of work with Ford and AutoNation. And then what I found next was the next big curve was advertising online. So this was a while ago, but started the digital advertising programs for like Ford Motor Company, uh, you know, General Motors. They work with them, Hyundai, just amazing brands. And kind of where that ties in today is I think those were amazing kind of breakthroughs, but comparatively to those, AI is like a tsunami. Like what's coming now with AI and just the opportunities, it's much more horizontal too. It's not just hitting one area like advertising, like Google did, or maybe in media. It's really going across every function of every business. So it's amazing time. And so for me, I got a little bit smarter this time. When I rode the SEO train years ago, it was really as an employee. Granted, it was in great positions, but as an employee. Then later on, as advertising came out, it really I started to launch my own business, which was more of like an agency. But to me, I was like, okay, those are kind of limited. How can you really scale? And the thought was, okay, why not launch software systems to do that? So I launched two software companies. One that helps more of the technical infrastructure of AI, which is the AIVZ you mentioned. But what AI wants is not just good content; they also want it from authoritative sources. So how does AI ascertain that someone actually is an expert? And how do experts get visibility in AI? And I think one of the fastest ways to do that is by podcast guest interviews, like we're hearing today. Because essentially, when we're having this conversation, a certain level of trust is being transferred from you to me and vice versa. And so that trust, which is in the intro when you mentioned authority is transferred, this is a really good example because basically reviews, endorsements, all those things impact someone's personal brand, which then determines how do you get in AI. So it's kind of a long answer, but that's kind of my journey over the past 30 years of how I got where I am today.
Okay, so tell us about AIVZ. How does it work? What is it exactly? Yeah, so give a little more detail about how, so people can understand.
Absolutely. So it's a reporting system that will identify the problems of why you may or may not be appearing within the AI results. It's a little bit more technical in focus. So we'll look on your website, it'll audit your website and say, okay, you don't have schema on it. It doesn't have your content structure properly. So to appear within AI results, the LLMs. So if someone goes into ChatGPT and they ask, who is the best attorney in XYZ area, they will want to, your content determines that many times. So it's a combination of technical factors and then what content you have essentially. And my system will report on that, but more importantly, actually fix those problems automatically. So you hit a button and it'll actually fix it on your website automatically or publish the content, create the content, and then publish it. It can do pretty much anything you need it to do, whether it's something as simple as an audit all the way to actually creating the content and then ultimately posting it on your website automatically.
Okay, now when you say AI, are we talking about, would it be the same thing, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Claude, whether it's Gemini, or some other?
It would work across all the LLMs. They all have different factors that they weigh more heavily than others. So for instance, Google obviously uses its own search index and it weighs things differently than ChatGPT, which tends to use more of Bing's search index because essentially all the answers are still coming from the search engines, but then AI is kind of getting answers directly from them and repurposing the content and what's called citations. They're citing you, and you want to make sure that you are appearing in all the places that the AI is citing, whether it's ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini.
Yeah, I heard about Perplexity yesterday. I haven't looked at it, but I heard that term yesterday.
Yes.
Is there like a leading AI right now as far as those search? I'm gonna use it as a search engine. I'm not sure what else to call them. Just AI focused.
Yeah, I talk about AI visibility. That's where I got the term AIVZ from. Plus, it kind of sounds like Avis, which is kind of funny. But the thought to answer your question, they all have different kind of strengths. So I would say, ChatGPT is a little bit more consumer facing and consumer focused, just because of the way they went to market. Claude is targeting more the enterprise and work related initiatives, especially coding. And Perplexity is really, out of the gate positioning itself more as like a replacement for search. I would say they're more for comparison and searching. So a lot of people are going there. But I would say in general, where the market is today, ChatGPT is probably the most relevant to being like a search engine from that perspective. Okay. Like in terms of volume and Perplexity is probably more like a search engine, but doesn't have the volume that ChatGPT does. And also ChatGPT is now layering in like ads, like just like Google has Google ads, ChatGPT is going in that direction as well. So therefore I kind of feel like that's the one from a turning perspective showing up, or if you're selling e-commerce or whatever it is, I would say ChatGPT is probably the most likely candidate for focus.
Okay. So my website is being handled through FindLaw still. So if I wanted to use your software, I'd have to ask them to give you permission to do that, right? Is that how it works?
Well, the audit can happen outside of the website. I don't have that access to it because I can look at your website as if it was a LLM, like a crawler from them, and can still assess your website. So
but it can't. You can assess it, but we can't fix the problems, is what I mean.
It depends on what your platform is on. Like FindLaw, I believe, is a proprietary platform. So in that case, the content could be automated and it could be posted, but they would still have to manually post the content. And if there are any technical issues, you still have to have a developer fix it. That's kind of the challenge with working with proprietary systems. They're closed access basically.
Okay. Yeah, I think these guys are closed. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then tell us about Guestify. What's Guestify about?
So Guestify is, if you kind of look at how AI determines who shows up, there's kind of your technical factors and there's also the content that's created. That's basically what AIVZ handles. But the other tier beyond that is this person authority, and are they known, are they trusted? That is where Guestify comes in, because what it does is it automates the process to get you booked on podcasts as a guest, just like we are today. Like I'm on your show. I have a platform that has indexed 5 million podcasts. It shows you who it's got about 1.2 million guests in it that have been on podcasts over the past few years. So it's a very comprehensive database. And so, for instance, imagine you're launching a book, one thing you do is put in a competing author's name and see all the podcasts that they've been on as a guest. So it's got a competitive intelligence perspective to it. But more importantly, it gives you a really good idea of what shows to go on because they've already vetted those shows. Or say, you're in a local market and you want to say, okay, the attorney down the road, where have they been a guest, if at all? And then you can get all that information. So it's really the world's largest database of podcasts, guests, and shows.
And how do you gather that information? I mean,
there's 3 levels of data. One level of data is what's called scraping. So I built a search engine, kind of like Google. It's called a spider, a robot that would go across the internet and find all these data points. That's one way. Second component to it is enhancing that data. So once I get that data, it's not good enough to just have the list of podcasts. It might be useful to say, okay, how many social media followers do they have on Facebook? What is their contact information? What is, gosh, there's so many questions you can have. Like, what is the size of their email address? Those are all things that you can't get from scraping. So I connect to probably 30 APIs, which are other data sources, essentially, and pull that data into my system, like deduplicate it, so we know it's the right, this person's saying this is who they are. It's the same person that they're referring to on this other database. So it basically takes all these data sources, aggregates them, deduplicates them, and then packages them. That's level 2. And level 3 is kind of my favorite. Level 3 is directly from the sources themselves. So a lot of times what I'll do is give away tools to podcasters, or do partnerships with podcast networks. So for instance, we have, we're going to very soon close a deal with the largest B2B podcast network and get them on the platform, which could give you a direct on-ramp to be a guest on the show. It could be a sponsorship play. I mean, there's a million things you can do with it, but it's basically the third tier is first-party, directly verified information from the hosts themselves. So those are the 3 layers.
So imagine on your list, you're going to show up being on my podcast today.
Yes, right? Yes. And then if you wanted to be on my platform, it's completely free and there's benefits to you. So for instance, say you wanted to find guests that are in a certain niche to have on your show. Well, you could use my search engine for free just by being on my platform. And the benefit to you is you can use the database, but then the benefit to my audience is it gets direct access to the podcaster. So that way, if someone's a good fit, it works both ways. It's almost like matching, but at a very, very large scale.
Got it. How did you learn to do all this?
I originally started programming in 2001, I think it was. So I've coded for a very long time and worked. Actually, crazy enough, I learned how to code, and the week before the World Trade Center went down, I was learning in New York City, and I was staying at the World Trade Center hotel. So even back then, in 2001, I was learning how to code, and had the company I worked for had funded that for me to learn SEO when it first started, like I started SEO in 97 or 98, and then learned it in the corporate world, and then I did the same kind of thing with coding. But nowadays, anyone can code, because a lot of my apps, even now, I'm vibe coding because it's more efficient. Like, I know how they work, I can do it myself, but it's way faster just to use AI to code. So now anyone can do it beyond just having expertise.
So did you learn this on your own way back when, or was it
Yeah,
went to
yeah.
school for this? Or okay.
No, I didn't go to school. I went to the school of hard knocks, or self. Like, I think so much you learn in college. College is great; it's a great experience, but there's so much you can learn just on your own, and being adaptable is way more valuable than just learning. Having a degree, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. There's certain things. God, there's a broadcaster out here. His name is John Ireland, who I think still does the Laker games on radio. And I think his thing is, don't let your education get in the way of your it's the same thing, career, or yeah, yeah. I think that's the same idea he was talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I have kids that are going into college or in college. I tell them, great, get the degree, but it really is the start of the journey, not the end, because you're gonna, especially the way the world's going, you have to be able to adapt and learn very quickly. And then, and knowledge is becoming a commodity, right? Because you can search for anything or use AI, and you're instant expert, basically. So I think the value is more in how you think and what you do with it, as opposed to just having some document.
yeah. I mean, things have changed so much just in the past couple of years since AI has opened up to everybody, and it's going to get even exponentially faster, and
Yeah.
everything's going to change exponentially. Where do you see this stuff going? I mean, is there a limit to how much AI can do?
Um, well, I mean, this is why, like, in my platforms,
Yeah.
the core principle is relationships, because AI can take over most knowledge-based jobs, I think, but what they can't displace is the relationship. So us here having a conversation, I think athletics will still be great, sports, and if you look at investment patterns, a lot of other, second tier, quote unquote second tier sports are now getting funded. Like professional, was a lot of the, like, running, like a lot of the sports you see in the Olympics, they're
Mhm.
going to start turning those into televised regular things, because that's where things are going. It's the live events, in-person meetings. All that is going to be difficult to displace. Service-based jobs, like blue-collar jobs, those are going to last longer. But a lot of the traditional white-collar jobs, where you're analyzing data or things like that, those are definitely at risk. So I think it's smart to focus on the areas outside of that, and focus on relationship equity.
Yeah. I think the one issue is Gen Z. I mean, are they comfortable with having interactions in person as much as we were when we were kids?
That's
Because
true. That is, yeah, that is a challenge for the younger. Yeah, they're not as they're yeah. You look at the average kid; they're just got their face down in their phone, unfortunately. So but that, I think if there's a skill they should learn, like, instead of going to college and learning that, take the course on relationship development or public speaking, doing things like that are going to be really, really important.
that's actually true. I remember one of the best classes I ever took in high school, and it wasn't because I really thought I was going to be using it. Was typing way back when. I just said I
Yeah,
want to take typing, but oh yeah, are you kidding me? Now that everything is typing, it's like I'm glad I took it.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's a
one of
bad
my
idea.
most impactful courses, I think, was there was like a public speaking or communications course, and to this day, I use a lot of those principles. So I think those are the foundational things that are going to be really important as we move forward.
Do you still do YouTube advertising?
No, not right now. I'm going to launch my own YouTube ads soon,
Okay.
but I've taken. I mean, I was doing them probably 3 months ago for other people, just from a consulting perspective. So I still know how to do it and familiar with it, but not doing it for myself right now.
I mean, I've heard mixed results. Are they something that's worthwhile looking into?
They can be, yeah. It really, it depends on, it's like anything. How is it structured? Does it have a good hook? Does it have a really good offer? Like, is the whole funnel, like, a lot of times the problem isn't the channel, like where you're marketing or advertising. It's really everything that's around that, like making sure you have a good offer, a call to action, If you're just saying someone to like a free consultation, then probably not going to work great, because everyone knows that's the sales pitch. So it's everything around that you want to have dialed in before you start doing the advertising.
Okay. So, building your brand, like actually you and I were both at the mastermind meeting or before this.
Yes.
And they were talking about it. I assume, is that connected to being authoritative, like having the authority that you're talking about, right? Is that part of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's when I say authority, a lot of times that is a result of your personal brand. So the personal brand creates the authority in addition to other things. So obviously, if you worked at MIT and you created, some crazy quantum computer or something, you probably have a lot of authority. So authority isn't necessarily just your media and your following and everything else. It's also your credentials. What have you accomplished? Did you write a book? All these things. So one of the things I have actually in my AIVZ software is it will give me an authority score. So it looks at, like I said, probably this 30 data sources to say, okay, where did this person go to school? Did they write a book? How many sales do they have for the book? So it compiles all this information and can give you an authority score. And so that's kind of how you track it. But to answer your question, the personal brand is a result of like to me, I think guest interviews like we're doing here is one of the fastest ways to build that. That's why I built Guestify.
Okay, so AIVZ does actually, so that's a different component which I did not realize, because I know earlier we talked about the AI and how your website's built, whether it's got that, but you can also do that as far as a person, sounds like, right?
It does,
So,
yeah.
example,
So yes, because AI rankings are based on the organizational and the personal brand.
Okay.
So they're considered entities. So there's corporate entities or business entity, organizational entities, and then there's individual entities. And so AI is going to look at both those parts. So when you have a blog post, for instance, within your company site, it's a really good idea to put who the author is and then link back to an author page that lists your credentials. So AI is now sophisticated enough to look at all of that.
Okay. Can your system help somebody figure out how to become an authority as a person?
Yes, yeah. So that's where the podcast comes into account. So one of the things they'll do is they'll look at my. So what's interesting is these platforms work together and they share data. So when you do that authority score, it'll search my other database in Guestify to find all the podcast appearances you've been on and the strength of those podcasts. So is this a podcast that's been around for a while, that's got millions of listeners? Or is it just a podcast that has only been around for a week and is just getting off the ground and doesn't have any listeners? So it's smart enough to know all that, and it'll score you based on that. In addition to saying, have you been to a school? Do you have a Wikipedia profile? Are you in traditional media? Have you been on NBC as a guest? Like it'll look at all these factors to score it, because AIVZ, real simply, it looks at the technical layer. Like, do you have everything technically set up correctly? And that's something, to your point, if you're working off a closed environment, someone would have to implement it for you. We can't automate it. Then there's the content part. Like, what is the content? Can the AI actually extract it? But then the third part are third-party factors like your authority and your trust, which comes from credentials, ratings, reviews, all the things that we've been talking about here. So AIVZ measures those three components.
Out of curiosity, does AIVZ also measure an actual podcast and say whether or not, what kind of authority it has, give it a score?
It does. It will look at that. Well, Guestify, they both do. AIVZ and Guestify both do, because when if you're using a search, it's kind of nice to see, okay, how many Facebook followers do they have? How many, if they have a YouTube channel, how many people? So we'll pull in all that data. And that's where I said the value is at, because it's not just looking at podcasts, it's looking at what is the potential impact of those podcasts. Not to say that's everything, because for instance, I've worked with some extremely successful people, and even they, when they launch a podcast, they have to launch it, right? So I worked with someone that had 1 million people on their email list, but I just launched the podcast, so they had no listeners. So if you looked at purely from a follower or list or like social media perspective, for instance, you would miss the fact that they have a large list.
Got it.
So you want to look at more than just that, but it is a good signal to see, okay, is this person authority or not?
So Tony, tell everybody how to get hold of you.
Yeah, great question. probably the best way is because I do so many different things and talk about so many different things. I have my own personal brand site. Go figure, right? So if you go to Meet Tony G, because no one can say or spell my last name. So if you go to Meet MEET Tony TONY G as in George.com, then you can learn more about me. There's a form there. So if you submit the form, I'll see it and happy to connect with anyone here. The other way is LinkedIn. That's where I'm probably the most active from a social media perspective. So there's a link to my LinkedIn profile right from Meet Tony G as well. Connect with me there also.
Okay. Is there a time frame when somebody should again talk with you? I mean, should they start off from the very beginning of building a site, having a podcast, or should they do it when they, start that and then try to see where it's going?
Yeah, I mean, probably the most important thing you can do is I would start doing the podcast interviews sooner than later, because the website can be built after. It doesn't matter because a lot of times podcasts don't air immediately. Typically, the larger the show, the longer it takes for them to actually air it and get you on it on the first place. That being said, you do want to have some sort of authority online. So I guess, a host isn't going to be as interested in you if you have no following whatsoever, no platform, no website. So those things help you get initially booked on your first podcast. One thing Guestify has, if you don't have those things though, is we have a media kit builder. So it's kind of like a one-page website that will get you started right away. So even if you don't have your own personal brand website, you can use my system in Guestify to build one in minutes, and then you have something to start with.
Okay, so that's important. So they could start from the ground with you first, kind of get an idea where to go. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then, and if we're starting off too, one of the best things you can do is just use your network, like we did here. Like I cold pitch you, we happen to be in the same mastermind. You asked me to be on the show, so here I am. So it's the same principle if you want to be a guest on a show. Start with the people you know, because they probably aren't going to be as critical as someone that's seeing a cold pitch. And then that builds up your resume. So then when you have your media kit, the media kit I build, providing my software, there's a place where you can put your past interviews. You can put those on there, and then that's already some points on your side to get you on the show, because they can say, okay, they've already been a guest. They can even listen to it from the platform. So those are all things that kind of build up your brand equity before you even get started. So you don't have to wait. That's the fastest path I found.
Okay, so let's get to know Tony a little bit. Do you still? Do you still bake?
No. The baking, I was more the business guy, and I was more the person that ate all the cannolis, unfortunately. but yeah. Now,
do you have the recipes though? That's important.
I did. I kept all those. Yeah, those were all
because
great.
those old recipes, they're not going to go away.
Yeah, those were amazing. Yeah, we had. They can make anything.
Yeah, and that's the important thing people have to realize. There's two different things going on. One is you may be great at what you do, but you may need help running the actual business itself.
Correct.
And not everybody can do that. So they need somebody who's going to be on the outside helping them with that portion of it, because it happens a lot.
It does. It happens all over the place. I don't care if you're a baker, if you're a dentist, or you're whatever service you're in, it doesn't necessarily translate to the business. And so you want to really either learn that side of it, or many times it might be better just to get someone that's an expert in that, and you stay in your lane and focus on execution.
Okay. So what do you like to do on your spare time when you're not doing this stuff?
Yeah. So I used to be a professional violinist. So I don't play as much as I would like to, but I do have concerts every once in a while. I literally just had one on Friday, this past Friday. So I like doing that. And I always have my violin handy because I use it as a mental reset. So if I'm doing coding or working on something very complicated, I like to kind of mix it up and then take like a 10-minute break, play for a little bit, and go back to my desk. So I literally always have my violin out. So it's really accessible. I just go play it, put it back in the case, leave the case open, and then go back to work. So that's the quickest way I refresh. I do that. And then I have 6 kids, so they keep me really busy. So everything from playing football outside with them, soccer, taking them to cheerleading practice, they all have different talents and things. I try to be a part of all of them.
So how far did you get in your violin career? I mean, professionally?
I played on some decent stages. I've won some talent competitions. Actually, the coolest thing I ever did was I won a talent competition with 10,000 people in an arena, or actually, I came in second place. That's a whole story. I won't even get into why I got second, but I got second place, and I played electric violin, and I transcribed "Sweet Child of Mine," and so that was kind of the coolest thing I ever did. But I've played Mechanics Hall, like some of the best halls in the country. I've played at, and decent audiences.
Yeah. Do you like the electric versus the regular violin, the string violin? Which one is your favorite?
I like the traditional ones. I mean, the electric's
Okay.
very fun for showing off and doing something crazy. Like I said, if you're gonna play rock music, it looked kind of lame to do it with or jazz or something like that.
Yeah.
It looked kind of lame to use traditional violin. So from that perspective, it's cool. But you can't. To me, the sound quality of a traditional Italian violins are actually the best violins.
Wow.
So having one like that would be the best way to go.
Yeah, my daughter took violin lessons for years. I'm not sure if she can still play or not. But it's interesting because yesterday I had David Urata yesterday, and he is a former professional cellist.
Oh, I know that. Wow, we just chatted the other day.
Yeah,
That thing came up.
he used to
Wow.
play cellist.
Wow.
And my wife used to play the flute, so she's a flautist.
Yeah, my sister plays flute. Yep.
I've got zero talent in this stuff. I would love to play the guitar or the piano, but you know how it is.
Yeah. That's actually how I met my wife. I was originally her violin teacher.
Oh, there you go.
And then over time, she was like, why bother learning it? I'll just have him play for me. And then, she'd give me $50 for lessons, and I would spend 80 bucks on dinner. So I was always in the hole. So I figured,
But hey, you could serenade her with your violin, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's how we met.
Okay, well, no, that's great. 6 kids, huh? I have 2, and they're adults now, so they're not as bad. But I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's a full house, and my oldest is 21. My youngest is 11. So it's a lot to manage because they all have different needs and different. They have the high schoolers and the drama there, the young ones with all the stuff they have going on. So it's all a mismatch of different stages of life and different challenges. So kind of have to be able to wear multiple hats.
Yeah, there you go. But I'm sure family dinners are fun when you have everybody together. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I love Christmas and Thanksgiving and all those. Those are great. Or Easter, we just had that. So those are great.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask you one question, which I ask all my guests.
Sure.
If based on what you know today, if you met your 10-year-old self, Tony, what advice would you give Tony?
I would say prioritize health. That's actually the big thing I'm working on now. So get in shape because, money doesn't go too far when you're in a hospital bed. So that's kind of like my next thing. And then the other thing I'm really thinking a lot about is, which goes hand in hand, is discipline and consistency. So those, like my word of the, I try to have a word of the year, and the word of the year this year is consistency, because you can have discipline, but you have to do it day in and out. You want to, like we just had it in the mastermind, you want to create content. Well, that's fantastic, but for it to really be successful, you have to be consistent. You could run a mile or 10 miles in one day, right? But you're better off doing the mile for 10 days, right? So it's really, the idea is like consistency. So if I have to look at myself, that would be the advice I give myself, which I'm trying to act on right now.
Okay, great. So tell everybody again how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so go to my website, Tony, Tony, at meet, MEET. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my email. Well, I guess that's out there now. But go to meet, MEET, TonyG.com. And then from there, you can either go to the contact form or to my LinkedIn profile. I check both of those.
Okay. Thank you again for being a guest. And for everybody who's watching and listening, if you like this episode, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Tony, thank you again.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate having me on today.